Imagine finding a text that somehow bridges ancient wisdom with a very specific spiritual perspective. That's what we've got here with Chapter 77, titled Divine Balance. It's from something called the BFG Handbook, and it's described as a Christian edition of the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah, it's a fascinating blend, isn't it?
It really is. What does it genuinely tell you about finding balance, practicing generosity, maybe embracing humility, and living a life of service that feels, divinely aligned? Kicks off with this really striking analogy. Compares the way of heaven, the divine way, to drawing a bow.
That image, it immediately sets a powerful scene. When you think about drawing a bow, there's tension, precision.
Right, bringing things into alignment.
Exactly. And the source describes the heavenly way using this imagery. The top end bends down, the bottom end bends up. And then it adds, heaven will reduce the draw if it is too much.
And to the draw if it is too little. It's this active balancing act.
It really is. What's absolutely fascinating right away is the contrast the chapter draws.
Between the heavenly way and the way of people, yeah.
Precisely. While the divine way reduces excess to add to lack, the source says people do the complete opposite. They reduce from what is too little in order to add to what is too much.
The human tendency, according to this specific source, is to take from those who have little and give it to those who already have plenty.
It highlights this fundamental human inclination towards imbalance, maybe accumulation.
Possibly even exploitation at the expense of others.
Could be seen that way, yeah.
Right.
And the source makes a really pointed observation here.
Which is?
It notes that only those with the Spirit of God, it says, can genuinely offer their excess to serve the world.
Implying everyone else is kind of stuck in this self-serving loop.
That seems to be the implication in the text, yeah.
Okay, so given this is presented as a Christian edition, how does it actually connect this ancient idea of divine balance, the bow analogy, with core Christian teachings?
Mm-hmm.
Where does this reduce excess, add to lack idea show up in Christianity?
Well, that connection is, I think, one of the most insightful parts of the source. If you take the bow analogy, God bending the high down, lifting the low up, it resonates really deeply with Christian concepts about God reversing earthly value.
Okay, like what specifically?
Think about the Beatitudes, for instance, Matthew 5.3, where Jesus calls the poor in spirit, the meek, the peacemakers blessed.
But the ones the world often overlook.
Or that famous line, the last will be first and the first will be last.
A direct reversal.
And it's even there in Mary's song, the Magnificat, in Luke. Verse 1.52, where she sings that God has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble.
So the source explicitly links these.
Yes, it connects God's actions reducing excess, adding to need with divine attributes like justice, mercy, provision. It's about God's grace flowing to those who lack and humbling those who are perhaps proud or overly self-sufficient.
And Jesus' life fits into this.
A source presents his life as the ultimate example, feeding the hungry, healing the sick, forgiving the marginalized. The text suggests this divine balance isn't just a philosophy, it's God actively intervening, restoring, bringing fulfillment.
That's a powerful image. Not passive balance, but active restoration. Okay, so the source gives us the concept, the theological links, but it doesn't stop there, does it? It gives a practical framework.
Exactly. It provides what it calls the Trinitarian MAP for renewal.
MAP standing for mindset, aim, and practice.
Right. It's laid out as a practical method derived directly from the chapter, the how-to part.
Okay, let's break that down, starting with mindset. How should we think about this divine balance?
The source gives 5 key mindset shifts. The first is pretty fundamental. Adopt a mindset of balance and moderation. Just like the bow, lowering the highs, raising the low, it links this to Proverbs 11.1 about honest scales. In real life, this is about balancing different areas: work, family, self, spirit.
Makes sense. What's another mindset point?
A big one is cultivating a generous and giving spirit. Because God, in this view, reduces excess to add to lack, the mindset should be one of, open-handedness.
So seeing your abundance, time, money, skills, not as something to just hold on to.
Exactly. Seeing it as something to share with those who need it. The source actually links this to 2 Corinthians 9.7 about cheerful giving, which is a really stark contrast to that way of people mentioned earlier.
Right, the hoarding tendency, which leads to the next point, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Rejecting that.
Yes, reject the human tendency to hoard. Actively resist those selfish inclinations. It's framed as focusing on the well-being of others, recognizing that true abundance maybe comes from distribution, not just acquisition. It mentions Luke 12.15, warning against greed. So the mindset avoids excessive self-promotion or just chasing material gain over fairness.
Okay. What else for mindset?
Another fascinating one. Embrace humble service without seeking recognition. Remember how it said only those with the Spirit can truly offer their excess.
Yeah, that implies authentic service comes from a different place than ego.
So the mindset here is serving humbly, finding the reward in the act itself, not in getting praise or credit. It references Matthew 6.34 about not letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Giving anonymously.
And finally, prioritize purpose over personal glory, fulfilling your purpose without needing recognition or credit. The source points to Colossians 3.23, working for the Lord, not for human masters. So the focus is on integrity, trusting God sees your work.
Wow, those mindsets really challenge the default way of thinking, don't they? So that's the foundation, how we should think. What about aim? What should we be striving for? What are the goals here?
The source then outlines 6 specific aims based on the text. First, aim for balance in influence and resources. Just like the bow needs balance, the aim is to consciously assess and adjust where you might have too much or too little in your own life.
And this isn't just money, right?
Not at all. It could be work-life balance, emotional energy, how you use your time. The aim is a kind of equilibrium. It cites Ecclesiastes 3.1, a time for everything.
Okay. Aim number 2.
Building on the mindset, aim for generosity and kindness. This makes it action-oriented. Actively aim to use your abundance, time, money, knowledge, simple kindness to support others. Deliberately work towards building a more compassionate community. It links to 2 Corinthians 8.14 about equality through sharing.
So it's about intentional action.
Very much so. Then there's aiming for humility and selflessness over self-glorification. Given that point about the Spirit-enabling service, the aim is to contribute quietly. Focus on the impact, not the applause. Again, Matthew 6.3-4 comes up. It's an intentional aim to maybe work behind the scenes sometimes.
What else should we be aiming for?
Aiming to be attuned to God's timing. The chapter says heaven does not rush things and yet fulfills. This contrasts with that human urge to control things, force outcomes, maybe out of anxiety or ambition.
So cultivate patience, trust the process.
Exactly. Trust in a divine timing, recognizing delays might even be part of preparation. Ecclesiastes 3.11 about God making everything beautiful in its time, which leads directly into the next aim. Rely on God's sovereignty rather than just human effort or control.
Seeking guidance instead of just pushing your own agenda.
Precisely. It references Proverbs 3.5-6. Trust in the Lord. Lean not on your own understanding. Seeking God's guidance in decisions, rather than acting purely out of ambition or anxiety.
Okay, one more aim.
Yes, finally. Aim for modesty in achievements. Achieve things without needing to take all the credit. It suggests redirecting credit to God, referencing 1 Corinthians 1.31, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord.
These aims definitely challenge conventional ideas of success. Okay, mindset, aim. That brings us to practice. How do we actually do this day to day?
Right, where the rubber meets the road. The source gives 5 key points for practice, turning aims into tangible action. First, simply practice balance in all things. This isn't a one-off fix, it's ongoing. It means actively reevaluating how am I spending my time? How are my resources really being used? Striving constantly to lower the excesses, uplift the deficiencies, reflecting that dynamic bow analogy. Proverbs 16.11 about just balances belonging to the Lord is cited here.
So constant adjustment. What's next?
Central to it all. Practice generosity with a willing heart, not just aiming for it, but doing it. The practice involves identifying where you have excess skills, time, money, and actively sharing it. Making generosity a habit, it points to 2 Corinthians 9.6-7 again, sowing generously.
Makes sense. Practice 3.
Cultivate selflessness over self-preservation. Actively resist that impulse to just accumulate for yourself. It means practicing fair, ethical behavior, even if it costs you something personally. Consistently considering others. Philippians 2.34 is the reference, valuing others above yourselves.
That's a tough one in practice sometimes.
It can be. Then, serve without expectation of reward. This reinforces the mindset and aim. Consistently do acts of kindness or service specifically without expecting praise or recognition. Find fulfillment in the act itself. Matthew 6.1-4 about practicing righteousness privately.
So anonymous good deeds, essentially.
That's a core part of the practice, yes. And finally, prioritize spiritual over material pursuits. Tying back to that idea about the Spirit enabling true service, the practice involves grounding your life in spiritual disciplines, prayer, reflection, scripture. The spiritual core helps ensure your daily choices are guided by these deeper values, not just temporary success. 1 Timothy 6.1-12, pursuing righteousness, godliness, faith.
Okay, that MAP framework mindset, aim, practice really does seem to break down divine balance into something actionable for, as it says, renewal. But here's where, for me, it gets really interesting for you, the listener. The source doesn't just leave these as, say, Christian principles. It has a respond section.
The universal truths section.
Exactly. It identifies what it calls universal truths reflected in this chapter, but also found across major religions. It shows these ideas aren't isolated.
This part is quite powerful, I agree. It really highlights the common ground between different traditions, take balance and moderation. The source points out this isn't unique. It finds echoes in Christian teachings on just weights. Proverbs 11.1. Islamic calls for a justly balanced community. Surah 2.143.
Buddhism, too.
Yes, the Buddhist middle way, avoiding extremes. And Hindu texts on balance and lifestyle, like in the Bhagavad Gita 6.16 and 17. The source emphasizes that avoiding extremes is a uniting principle, citing Ecclesiastes 3.1 again. In practical terms, work-life balance, fairness.
Amazing. What about generosity?
Generosity and selflessness, God reducing excess to add to lack, that resonates everywhere too. Christian teachings urge sharing. Islam mandates zakat, giving to the needy, Surah 2.177. Buddhism has the practice of dana, or generosity. Hinduism values charitable giving, Bhagavad Gita 17.12. The core idea of helping those in need, like Matthew 6.34 advises, is fundamentally universal, supporting causes, volunteering time.
It transcends boundaries.
Humility and non-glorification. This is mirrored in Christian warnings against public piety for show, Matthew 6.1. Islamic focus on pure motives in giving, Surah 76.9. Buddhist emphasis on selflessness.
And Hinduism.
Hindu teaching on performing duties without attachment to results, Bhagavad Gita 3.19. The shared core, as the source notes with Philippians 2.3, is acting from pure intentions, not for external validation. Anonymous kindness fits right in.
What about timing?
Yes, patience and trust in divine timing. That line about heaven not rushing but fulfilling. Parallels in Christian calls for patience, like a farmer waiting for rain, James 5.7. Islamic teachings on perseverance, Surah 3.20. Buddhist emphasis on patience as a virtue, one of the paramitas. And Hindu detachment from the fruits of action, Bhagavad Gita 2.47. Trusting a greater plan over anxious urgency, that's a common thread, like Isaiah 40.31 points to. Practicing patience through delays.
Okay, is there one more?
Yes. Selflessness in action. The idea of achieving without taking all the credit. Christian teaching says good works should point to God, Matthew 5.16. Islam speaks of multiplied rewards for spending wealth for Allah, Surah 2.261. Buddhism emphasizes right intention. Hinduism speaks of God preserving what devotees have, Bhagavad Gita 9.22. Acting selflessly contributes to the well-being of everyone. Doing good deeds without needing applause.
It's truly remarkable, isn't it, how this single chapter, framed within one specific tradition, kind of opens a window onto these deep principles. Principles of balance, generosity, humility, patience, selflessness, that are presented not just as core to this source, but as timeless truths found across so many different beliefs. So just to recap briefly, we've looked at this core idea of divine balance, using that striking bow analogy. We explored the contrast the source makes between this divine way reducing excess to meet need and the human tendency to do the opposite.
And then we unpacked that practical MAP framework for personal renewal mindset, aim, and practice. How to think, what to strive for, how to act.
And maybe most surprisingly, we saw how these principles are framed as universal truths, showing up across major world religions. It reveals this incredible shared ground.
Values that really do seem to transcend cultural and religious lines.
So what does this deep dive mean for you, listening right now?
Well, it suggests that this pursuit of balance, generosity, humility, it isn't confined to just one path. It seems to be a deeply human quest, maybe even a divinely intended one, that resonates across different traditions. It offers a really powerful alternative to how the world often tells us to operate.
It certainly does.
So here's a final thought we want to leave you with, something to chew on. If the source is right, and the way of people is to continually add to what they already have in excess, while the heavenly way is to reduce excess to add to what is needed. What does that reveal about how we typically measure success in the world today? And maybe more personally, what alternative measures might this chapter suggest for evaluating success or fulfillment in your own life?
Something to definitely reflect on.
Indeed. That brings us to the end of this deep dive.